Here are your hosts, Kyle Fellows and Andrew Mertig. This is the Draft Fellows Podcast. Welcome back to the Draft Fellows Podcast. I'm Andrew Mertig. That is Kyle Fellows. Together, we are the Draft Fellows. Make sure you check us out on YouTube, or, of course, you can find the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. In our last episode, we started going through all of the teams across the NFL to see who might be in the market for a quarterback in the 2025 season. We know a lot is going to change over the course of the season, but it is interesting to take a look at upcoming free agents, and in addition, what could be a interesting rookie class of quarterbacks, and then what teams might be interested. So, Kyle, you want to just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right in here to the AFC South and AFC West today. I'm excited about this.
Excellent. So we start at the top with the AFC South and the Houston Texans. Any interest in the quarterback there?
No, they are very, very happy. They are thrilled out of their mind. They're so happy.
Hard pass. Indianapolis Colts, obviously, we know the giant investment in Anthony Richardson. One hypothetical question for you. Let's say there was like another unfortunate injury for Anthony Richardson and he misses most of the upcoming season. Like, do you think the Colts start to sniff around a rookie quarterback?
I don't know. I mean, like, it's interesting because the flashes were there for him last year, but we've like barely seen him play. Like, there's so much hype around Anthony Richardson right now, and I think that there's reason to be excited, but like he's barely done anything measurable and sustainable. So like, yeah, that's a scenario where like if he can't learn how to play a little bit differently to preserve his body and then it happens again, they probably just roll him out there again for 2025 and like, all right, let's see if we can get this right. But I think they start to feel that way, right? Like, he was a project coming out of Florida, right? Like, no one thought that he was necessarily ready plug and play. And so he was going to need that time to acclimate, and he didn't get it last year. And then if he doesn't get it again this year, you're starting to like kind of build on not false hopes, but just continuing to hope rather than on something that you've actually seen. But I hadn't really considered that, but I think the Colts have their guy for a while, but there is that scenario where this could get a little bit murky for them.
Yeah. And then we move on to Jacksonville, and we know Trevor Lawrence was, maybe there are some questions surrounding him, but he gets a huge bag of money this offseason, and we expect him to be the starter for a very long time in Jacksonville, which leads us to the Tennessee Titans. And they're moving forward with Will Levis this season. Mm-hmm. Do you think they end up in the market, or are they maybe a little bit more of a maybe?
I think this is a maybe. I don't think that there's a lot of good buzz around Will Levis right now. And I think that people will be really pleasantly surprised by what Callahan is able to do there with the Titans. I don't think he was the sexiest hire as a coach in the cycle, but I really, really think that like he's going to bring over some good offense from what they were able to do in Cincy. It sounds like that maybe Ridley is going to get a resurgence after a very strange career arc for him. And if that happens and Will Levis can chuck it, this may be one of those situations where like they win enough games that they're outside the range of the top guys. And they say, okay, let's see what Will Levis can build on going into his third season. So I think that it could be one of those like steady growth things where they stick with Levis because they're outside the range there. So this is going to be a fascinating one because I think the range of outcomes is very wide. When we did, we had a conversation off air a couple of weeks ago around divisions and who was, going to end up at the top of the divisions. The Titans for me came out like way, way at the bottom. And I see a very clear path where they don't finish like with like 4 or 5 wins. But I think that 4 or 5 wins is definitely within the range of outcomes as well. So like this could go a million different directions. And if it doesn't go well, then of course, quarterback is probably the first thing that's going to be on the chopping block.
Yeah. Second round quarterbacks are weird. Like I
Yeah.
think about the NFL history of this. So, you have recent success with Jalen Hurts. I think back to like the Kevin Cobbs of the world with Philadelphia or
Mhm.
Andy Dalton, for instance. And there's just like a lot of really weird mixed results. They don't always tend to turn out in the best way. Levis is fascinating because, you're right. This is going to be the Cincy offense. They surrounded him with weapons. They're going to run out of shotgun a bunch, let Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears hopefully take some pressure off of Levis.
Mhm.
Receivers are all really good. Will Levis is a bizarre fit in that offense, I would say, because Joe Burrow gets the ball out as fast as anybody. He's like pure processor, pure accuracy. Will
Yeah.
Levis is a hold it and chuck it quarterback. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that is going to translate. And we've seen quarterbacks make drastic improvement in processing that maybe we weren't expecting. And that could happen with Will Levis. I would probably bet against it. But at the same point, I think the Titans have a lot of upside
Mm.
if Levis turns out good
Mhm.
or maybe
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
better than good, and almost no downside because if he stinks, you just move on and nobody cares. It's like Malik Willis was the year before,
Yeah.
and everybody's just forgot about him. It's like,
Yeah.
they wasted a third round pick. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Right.
if you waste a second round pick, all right, but you're getting a lottery ticket here, and we'll see what happens. You haven't invested the draft resources or the financial capital that this is going to blow up in your face. So for the Titans, I think they're in a pretty enviable position. And if they finish as bad as you projected them, then they're going to end up with their pick of the litter at quarterback anyways.
So the question, though, Andrew, and this is the most important thing for us to consider, is if the Titans move on from Will Levis and he's no longer the face of the Titans and no longer has that platform, who becomes the player to prop up the mayonnaise industry in the NFL and carry that banner? Because it's a very niche market, and I'm kind of concerned that like there may not be anyone else to do that. Like this is a
I am
concern.
more anti-condiment than anybody else in the world, and you're bringing up mayo on our show.
Yeah, it's a Hellman's mayonnaise, man. Hellman's. And we need sponsors, man. We need to get some sponsors going here. But I saw
Yeah,
that the other day and I'm
that's
like,
one
"Oh my
way.
gosh, he's milking this mayonnaise thing for all it's worth." That's fantastic. Good for
Yeah.
him making some money, but yeah, Titans, we'll have to wait and see what turns out there and what next year looks like. It'll be fun.
So then we transition over to the AFC West. Bo Nix, of course, first round pick with the Broncos. Cannot imagine them going anywhere that would involve them transitioning away from Bo Nix, even if it's a catastrophe. And, you know, I would imagine Sean Payton would be back no matter what because they're
Mhm.
invested in him. But even if he was gone, I think the next regime would at least try to get something out of Bo Nix there. And then we have the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Seem pretty settled in, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. They really haven't had
Maybe.
anybody since Alex Smith. It's kind of been a rough road there. So, but
Yeah, they'll just
what a
have to
deal.
suffer through
Yeah.
another
What a poor
potential Super
franchise.
Bowl winning
Yeah.
season. Anyways, as a Packers fan, we often get labeled entitled town. I think the Chiefs are quickly picking up that mantle. So,
Yes.
um, we have the Las Vegas Raiders next, and I think this is the fascinating team in the AFC West. So,
Mm.
let's spend a little bit of time talking about this. Right now, of course, they have Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. Minshew was named the starter for the opening of the season, but of course, this is going to be an open competition. So, what
Mm.
do you think the Raiders are going to do moving forward?
It's really interesting. And I think if you read between the lines with Coach Pierce there, it kind of feels like they kind of wanted Aiden O'Connell to win this job, which is interesting that they went out of their way to pay someone as like an insurance option that they ended up needing to exercise. But it feels like O'Connell did not perform well enough for them to do that. And so then now they're back to Minshew. I think we know Minshew is Band-Aid. Minshew's a great Band-Aid, though. Like this is
Yeah.
but you're not trying to win. I don't think the understanding is that you're going to compete in that scenario. But Gardner Minshew is, good props to him on his career and what he's been able to do and continue to get these opportunities and show that he deserves them. But this is a scenario. We've worked through a lot of these teams in these divisions where we've said these teams are probably going to be picking pretty late, even if they aren't able to, make the playoffs, or they're not able to get to where they're aspiring to get to. The Las Vegas Raiders are the team that you get to first, that you say, this is a team who has a path to not only need to replace a quarterback, but potentially be picking in the top 5 pretty reasonably. And so I think that this is a place where you have to say this is a very open door for a new quarterback here.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we did a entire preview. We went through it on playoffpredictors.com and picked every game for the entire season and talked about our results on the Pack a Day podcast. And I had the Raiders making the playoffs. So, so thanks, Kyle.
Upsetting, and that's where we disagree,
Upsetting.
because I don't think of this team in that way. But it's interesting that you say that, because if that's true, then we continue this path of like, they could use a quarterback, but their team might be too good to get them in that range. And you don't have to be so far outside of that range. Like, you can be picking 7 or 8, which is early, but it's still too far down the board to get one of the coveted guys, and then you're settling for something else. So it will be very, very interesting to see what happens to the Raiders, because I think that there's a lot of buy-in there from the players in this new coaching regime there. So, and a lot of talent, right? Like, they threw in Brock Bowers, they have Devontae Adams, who's no slouch, even like kind of at the, his 30-year-old season. Like, so I think there's a lot of talent here, and I can see why you would make that argument that this team is not going to beat the Chiefs in this division, but they may actually go farther than a lot of people give them credit for.
Yeah, for me, I think this is one of the best defenses in the entire league. And what we saw last year with Gardner Minshew is he can make just enough plays to keep a team in playoff contention until very late. And, if it wasn't for a couple of unfortunate plays in that final game for the Colts, they would have been in the playoffs. And so that's where I was going. I think the Raiders have a lot in the skill positions. If their offensive line can just hold together, that probably is going to require a lot of health, but I think they could be fairly competitive. The Raiders are probably my early prediction to be the team that goes the hardest after Dak Prescott if he hits free agency. So I think about, this is Las Vegas. They have a brand new stadium. They have a ton of money. Their owner doesn't have a ton of money, but like the organization does.
Yeah.
And that could be a very appealing landing spot for somebody. They have the benefit of state taxes. They have the benefit of location, branding opportunities. I think Dak probably, after spending most of his career in silver and white, wouldn't mind moving to silver and black and, being the highest paid quarterback in the league. So
wow.
I could see the Raiders trying to make a splashy move like that, regardless, even if my predictions come true, which nobody is expecting. I don't think Minshew's the long-term answer. I don't think we've seen enough from O'Connell to hold back on getting a true difference maker. So I can see the Raiders trying to make a splash like that, especially if getting a guy through the draft isn't going to seem feasible.
Yeah, I like the Dak call there. That's really interesting. I think we could do that with a lot of quarterback needy teams, but because of who the Raiders are, the location, that scenario, that one does make a good bit of sense. And you answered my next question, was just like, is there a chance that Minshew, if things go well, they make the playoffs, say they win a playoff game, like, is there a world where he finally gets a contract a la Jared Goff, a la Baker Mayfield? I don't think that that's in the cards, but the reason that we didn't see those other things panning out is because we didn't think that it was possible. So I guess there's always that small chance. I don't anticipate that, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Daniel Jeremiah always talks about trucks and trailers. I have never envisioned that Gardner Minshew could be a truck at any point in his career, meaning that he can sort of bring the team with him. I feel like he's a guy you win with, not because of. And, I think he serves himself well in that role. Maybe if the Raiders can't make a splashy signing or don't feel like they're in striking distance to draft a quarterback, they would consider bringing him back. I just don't think it's a really long-term fix. Yeah. And then we have the Los Angeles Chargers, and they have Justin Herbert.
Yeah, but let's get wild with this one, okay? Let's say Andrew was like ready to close the show and be like, "Nah, we're not
Yeah,
talking about."
I tried.
But what if it's bad this year? Like, what if it's really, really bad? And they're committed, right? Like Harbaugh's the guy. They're committed there. That's going to be the plan. But what if they're like, we gotta rebuild this thing and we gotta blow it up? Like, is there a chance where like they ship off Justin Herbert for an opportunity to like? Now I know that NFL teams don't jettison franchise quarterbacks, but like Harbaugh's a weird guy. Like he has his way of doing things. And if he thinks he can like redistribute those resources, whether it's the contract, whether it's the like, the ability to get other guys in, build that offensive line. What if that all, I'm just saying it's unlikely, but like that's the only possibility here where the Chargers do something weird and we end up in a spot where they're looking to get another quarterback. You know, I don't think it's possible, but
Yeah, I need to take a little bit further look at this because I
the
don't know
contract,
what the trade value is versus cutting him. But as of
right?
right now, he would have $110 million dead cap hit.
Yeah,
And
that's not going to happen.
the Chargers just got done unburying
Yeah,
themselves this offseason. So I would be of the opinion that the contract, I
yes,
like where you're going with that, because I do think there's probably something to the fact that Jim Harbaugh is saying, well, the focus of our team is going to be running,
hmm
and we don't necessarily have to have an elite quarterback. We need a good quarterback. But if we could
yeah.
then turn that into a ton of resources, maybe that's something he would look at doing.
hmm
I got a sneaking suspicion. Hopefully nobody who's in a fantasy league with me that's drafting this weekend is listening, but I have a sneaking suspicion Justin Herbert's going to be a little bit better than people are thinking for this year.
I
I
agree.
think the Chargers are going to be a little bit more willing to pass than what we've traditionally seen out of a Greg Roman offense.
Sure. No, I think that that's super reasonable just because so many people have lowered their expectations. So we probably get Justin Herbert back in 2025 with this team. And I think we do maybe get a pretty good Justin Herbert this year from the Chargers. It's going to be interesting because that's a tough division. So they've got an uphill battle to try to catch the Chiefs. But that's going to be a fun team to watch over the next 3 to 5 years to see how they change the culture, to see if they're able to really produce like a winning culture there in
They could do a post June 1st
LA.
trade and actually
Okay.
save a little bit of money in 25. It would hurt 2026, but it's not catastrophic by any means. They're actually plus money in that category. So it's not
Mhm.
impossible. Cutting him is impossible.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that would be
But
a very poor decision on their part. But yeah, it's unlikely, but we've seen some crazy things happen. I just want to throw it out there as like a really, really
yeah,
long
I
shot.
think that's fascinating because we certainly have seen some abrupt endings to relationships with teams. I don't think we necessarily there was a little bit of the contract thing, but we didn't necessarily see Kirk Cousins coming to an end in Washington and then transitioning to Minnesota.
hmm
We would have thought that maybe Derek Carr would be around Vegas a bit
Yeah.
longer than he was, especially with the
Yep.
Devontae Adams acquisition. So we do sometimes see these quarterback transactions happen relatively quickly.
hmm
But that's going to be a fascinating one. I think the Chargers are a team that you could see maybe bottoming out based on all the talent they lost and
Yeah.
finishing with a really high pick. You could also
hmm
see them making playoffs. And like
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Both
the
scenarios.
the AFC West is truly going to be the wild wild west out there, because
hmm
I think there's three teams that are going after the Chiefs a little bit, and we'll see how much they can be in contention.
Yeah, so we've kind of worked our way through the AFC over the last two shows. And if you stuck with us through this conversation, really the only team that we feel like is probably picking super high is the Titans. And we certainly see a path for where they're not picking super high. Andrew thinks that the Raiders are going to win the Super Bowl. So, no, but it's just going to be fascinating because working our way all the way through the AFC, there's a lot of quarterback needs potentially, but not a lot of teams that are going to be picking high and have the opportunity to do that as we perceive things right now. So really, really fun. Stick around with us. Next episode, we're going to flip the page over to the NFC and work through those divisions. From the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have got you covered. So until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.